Hi everyone, welcome to today's Variety Hour, the October edition. I'm delighted to welcome 4 new speakers today, talking about different projects, communities, upcoming courses, and also a big question that's been kicking around in our community about whether there is a future for NFTs. So we're really delighted to cover all of these topics and be joined by these speakers today. Today we have, as always, 4 speakers. We'll have 3 quick talks, followed by our normal quiz with Ellie, and then we'll have a longer discussion presentation with Adrian. Our first speaker is going to be Melanie Smith today, who's joined us to share the recently launched Bird Migration Explorer platform. We'll then go to Cristian Rossi, who is the lecturer on our Earth Observation 101 lecture series. And I know some of the people in the chat, in the call today have joined us for the first lecture in that series. So Cristian's going to tell us a bit more about that. Then David Rolnick's joined us from the Climate Change AI community, and he'll be telling us a bit about how to get involved with their community and how we can bridge between Wild Labs and the climate AI communities. And then we'll hand to Adrian and have a discussion about the future for conservation NFTs. Right, so enough from me. I'm going to hand to our first speaker, which is Melanie. Melanie, do you want to just take it away?
Sure. Thank you, Stephanie. And it's really neat to see people from all over the world here. So I'm going to give you a quick demo of the Bird Migration Explorer. We just released this on September 15th. It's a free public website. And the first thing you'll see when you come to the homepage is a map showing you tracks from 9,300 individual birds. These tracking data come from hundreds of different studies and show us the paths that birds take when they migrate across the Americas. I can hover over this map and see which individual species made each of these different journeys. And if I go ahead and click through, then it'll take me to learn more about that species migration. There are 3 main things you can do with the Explorer. You can look up a bird species, a location, or a conservation challenge. So we'll get started by looking up a species. You're able to just sort of thumb through here to find something interesting, or you can filter to find something specific, or you can just type something into the search bar. So I'm looking for the Swainson's hawk. This will take me to their full annual cycle map, showing me where they go throughout the Americas over the course of the year. And what you're seeing are tracks in yellow from 86 individual birds from 4 different tracking studies. Then in the background, I can pause this timeline and zoom in and take a closer look at these data. So these brown dots come from eBird status models, and we summarize those into these hexagons to show relative abundance. And this is for each week of the year. So if I click play again, you'll just see the abundance has changed, and eventually those Swainson's hawks disappear as they're heading further south. The data also come in 2 resolutions. So if I zoom in far enough, you'll access a finer resolution of those data. A couple other things I want to point out. One is just this layers box where you can control which layers you're seeing and read more about each of them, but especially the data providers panel, because this is where you can see the list of citations for every study included in this particular map. And this data sources box is specific to every different map view in the Explorer. And then also just to mention this related stories section where you can read more about the species. So now we'll go out to locations. And this is where I can see how an area I'm interested in is connected to other places across the hemisphere. So I looked up Salt Lake City, Utah. This is using millions of bird re-encounter locations. And it's showing me all the places where tagged birds from Salt Lake City, Utah have been re-encountered across the hemisphere. I get a list of countries that I'm connected to. And I can explore this map to see which species connect me to different places. So down here in Panama, 5 tagged birds of 3 species flew between Salt Lake City and this area of Panama. And one of those is the Swainson's hawk. Now, the third piece is conservation challenges. These are 19 different hemispheric layers that show us the distribution of the human footprint and environmental changes across the hemisphere. So I'm just going to scroll through and let you see what we've included. These are not all of the major threats to migratory birds, but they are the ones that we were able to map at a hemispheric extent. So I'll go back up to agriculture. And each of these maps is going to show you the footprint across the hemisphere. So this is the footprint of agriculture. We're able to see how extensive it is and where it's more intense as well. Like the other maps, I'm able to zoom in and access a finer resolution of data. And then if I select a location, it'll give me a list of species. And what this list shows me are species that are relevant to agriculture and co-occur with agriculture in this place that I selected. So I'm going to go down this list and back to the Swainson's hawk again. Here we go. Okay, so now this is going to combine the 2 pieces you've already seen, the distribution of Swainson's hawks over the course of the year and the footprint of agriculture. And it's going to then play this so you can see where Swainson's hawks are exposed to agriculture as they migrate. Now let me pause the map and zoom in a little so you can see it closer. We've just combined these 2 elements. So the dot size, just like on the migration map, that's how many Swainson's hawks. And then the color this time is how many of them are exposed to agriculture. And that's done with a 3-kilometer analysis that's then summarized up into these larger areas. So I think that's all I have time for. Just the last thing I'll say is this big orange take action button and this one down here. This is where you can go to get involved, sign up to learn more about migratory birds and the threats that they face. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. David, do you want to, your question matches one of my questions. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure, happy to. So I just thought like your data viz was all really, really like cool and well put together. And so I'm just wondering if you could briefly talk about kind of how that got kind of conceptualized and designed. Were you like working with an outside firm to do all the design work? Kind of how did that go down?
Yeah, sure. Well, so the cartography was largely in-house at Audubon, National Audubon Society. My team, we worked a lot on prototyping how we could accurately depict the data and also make it hopefully, nice to look at and interesting and informative, and really try to blend all those needs together. And then the overall application design, that was done by a firm called Postlight. And we also worked with Blue Raster. They did the back end data engineering. They took all of the data that we processed and published it to make it available to the application. So it was a Postlight, Blue Raster, Audubon triangle to make all of that. And it's all built on Esri technology. They were part of it all through as well.
Julian, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Yeah. My question really is about is the data going to stay current? Like, are you going to get new data? And then if you do, how do you get that? And how much effort is it to put that data in?
Sure. Getting data sharing agreements in place was a massive effort. And you probably noticed those founding partners listed at the bottom. Those are the major founding partners. The data sets like bird banding and eBird, they come from a single place, a huge database one owner, but the tracking data came from hundreds of individuals that we have a data sharing agreement with each one. So that was a very long and intense effort. And now that we have those in place, we have the ability to pull the most current data and keep pushing that into the Explorer. So some of those are on an annual timeline like eBird or the US Geological Survey's bird banding data. Those are on an annual timeline. The tracking data, we think we will update that every quarter, and then a lot of new studies will come online, and we'll work with new tracking data holders to try to get additional data sets in there.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melanie. I'm going to hand over to Cristian now. Cristian, do you want to tell us a bit about the Earth Observation 101 course we're collaborating on?
Of course. Can you hear me?
We can. Perfect.
Well, first of all, hi everybody. So I'm new to this community, so it's nice to see you all here. So my name is Cristian, and I'm at the moment based in Oxford in an organization where I'm working with. It's a research center called Satellite Applications Catapult. So we deal with satellite technology in general, and I'm also a lecturer at the University of Oxford here in town. So as Steph was mentioning, so I'm here to introduce and to mention about the Earth Observation course that we started uploading last Monday on the WILDLABS website. So this is like a course that we are running through October, more or less, or beginning of November, so over 4 weeks. And it's based on different subjects. So ideally, when we talk about this, Steph and I, about a year ago, so our objective was to give some knowledge to the conservation community about the Earth observation. So this course is actually for absolute beginners. So I won't enter into the very subtle technical details of Earth observation, which require actually a master course and a university course. But I just want to give you really an idea and an appreciation of what we can do with this technology. So the first part of the course, which was uploaded on Monday, is all about terminology and understanding which kind of data we have, what are we talking about, the physics behind it, so that we can move it to the second part of the course, which is coming next Monday, which is quite a fun one. So we will start seeing applications and also in the conservation. So not only directly in conservation, so we will see, for example, counting animals from space, penguin colonies, whales, elephants. So not only a direct application, but also indirect that can spark your ideas. So we will see, for example, problems linked to deforestation, linked to agricultural greening, or the status of plants and so on, water quality. Which are I'm sure that are touching some of your problems indirectly, but so that we can start having ideas of how we can potentially incorporate this source of data into your application area. So this will happen next Monday. Then the Monday after, in a couple of weeks, we will go a bit more in detail in a couple of projects where I will show actually how do we use this data. So how do we start a project that has Earth observation in it? The requirements, how do we gather requirements? How do we get data? How do we run the projects? And I have a couple of examples. One of them is it's on conservation, and it's on conservation corridors. So how we monitor those. And finally, the last week, I'll present a bit more some practicalities on it. So where do we get data? So how do we actually engage with the data providers? Or how do we process data? How do we generate results? So again, so this is like an overview that we wanted to give to you. It's all available, of course, for free. So this will stay in YouTube as well. And it's divided in short videos, so that if you're interested in only a specific bit and you want like a peel of 4 minutes about, I don't know, a specific sensor, you will find it in that way, or longer video. But yeah, it has been a pleasure really to to do this, and I'd love actually to hear after the course or during the course your views about it. Some of you might already use this data, some other might have some ideas, but I'm also here to cooperate. So if there is some interest and some potential cooperation or something that is coming out of it, I'd be very happy to to participate and to get something out of it. So I don't have any slides. So this was just really a brief introduction and about the course, about myself, and this happened and it will happen through October. And it's it's very exciting and it's nice to see you all.
Thanks so much, Cristian. I know, Robin, do you want to jump in? As you were at our live watch party together on Monday. Any initial thoughts? I know you and Carly were definitely there.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It was really great and had really beautiful visualizations. And I have to agree to Steph, I think, was talking about that you have a perfect voice for a course like that.
Thanks. Thank you.
Carly, I know you were asking about live Q&As. Did you want to ask Cristian?
Hi. So yeah, I was wondering if there was going to be any sort of like live, like synchronous kind of thing, like office hours or a live Q&A type thing, just to get there, because there are some things like that I think would just be easier for you to explain in person if you like have the slide and are like pointing to, things than trying to like write out what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. So I think we need to set up something like that with Steph. So at the moment, what we have like in the platform, WILDLABS platform, we have like a space for questions. I think I've got already a couple, one from you, and we address those in this way. But yeah, I agree. This would be a nice way to engage more like live rather than after some time. So let's arrange something with Steph on that. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, we've organized, so everything's like evergreen, so you can watch it at your own pace on YouTube, but we're also organizing live watch parties on YouTube, so we can watch it together and learn together, because it's a lot easier to do it when you're in a community, right? So we might see if we can pull you along after each week and just have some questions live there.
Yeah,
cool.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Cristian. Okay, David, how are you doing? Are you ready? Shall I throw to you? You're muted.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. Yeah, let me share my screen here. Hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. So I'd like to talk through very fast a lot of different aspects of the climate change AI community. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a computer scientist, but I am also an amateur birder and lepidopterist, and really enthusiastic about the various communities that are represented here. It's fantastic to talk with you all. I am one of the co-founders and chairs of Climate Change AI, which is a global nonprofit which catalyzes impactful work at the intersection of climate change and machine learning via a number of different things. We have a global community of diverse stakeholders across many different sectors and backgrounds. We guide impactful work through educational resources and programs, which I'll talk through a little bit more. We fill gaps in essential infrastructure via funding, tools, and other kinds of infrastructure like data sets. And we advance discourse and advise relevant players from policymakers to companies to researchers within this space. And I'm going to talk through a bunch of our initiatives really fast in these 5 minutes. We are a volunteer-driven organization. We have about 50 people running the organization, and that supports a broader community of about 10,000 folks, including researchers, practitioners, policymakers, and many other people. What really is the space of climate change and machine learning AI? It involves a lot of different things. It includes some aspects of biodiversity and conservation, but it also includes electricity systems, land use, transportation, heavy industry, climate modeling, climate science, and many other areas. And so many different communities fall within the scope of climate change AI. And we work very closely to try to maintain relevance within a huge number of very diverse communities by running programming specific to different communities and by bringing in people who aren't necessarily aware of the intersections of these different communities. I think that one of our strengths is in connecting folks from very different backgrounds. So, for example, the machine learning and AI community often doesn't really know how to work on climate change or ecology relevant problems, and needs entry points, needs introductions, and connections to relevant people who can facilitate that kind of knowledge sharing. So we've done a lot of different things, but I wanted to, before I get again to climate change AI's initiatives, I want to quickly talk about the overlap with this community specifically. Many areas of conservation work overlap pretty heavily with climate change work, either in the adaptation space, responding to the effects of climate change, or in the mitigation space. And we try to have a very big tent when it comes to thinking about these topics. Some of the relevant applications of machine learning and AI that we've seen, many of which you may be aware of or are working on, include image identification, for example, citizen science like the INAT tool, camera traps like the mega detector, remote sensing, everything from land cover classification, as we were just talking about, carbon stock estimation, plant phenology, sound ID and bioacoustics, species distribution modeling, marine robotics, so like literally control algorithms for robots, and many other things. This is why you should care about this kind of intersection with machine learning, and why many of these areas are really relevant to our community as a climate change and machine learning community. So very quickly, going through some of the things that, reasons why you might want to engage with the climate change AI community, we have a number of reports which try to provide an overview of the space to different audiences. Tackling climate change with machine learning is intended for a research audience primarily, people who are interested in seeing where machine learning can be relevant in different areas of climate action. We have this report for policymakers providing recommendations for government action. This is a video tutorial that we produced really briefly, really recently for the International Conference on Machine Learning, if you're interested in an overview of the space. We have an events series, including all these different conferences and other events. These are the flagship machine learning and AI conferences. Also at the COP, which here is the climate COP, not the biodiversity COP. We have an upcoming workshop at NeurIPS on December 9th, which you can find out information about here. You can find video recordings from our past events here, and you can search through papers here, including by keyword. So if you're interested specifically in ecology relevant papers, that might be a way to go. We have a community platform where you can engage with other folks interested in this intersection, ask questions, and form collaborations. We have a summer school, which focuses broadly on the intersection of machine learning and climate change. Obviously, there is the Caltech Summer School specifically for computer vision and ecology. This is a much broader scope, both of techniques, it's all of machine learning, and of application areas. There's one track for those with machine learning expertise, and there's another for those with climate change relevant expertise. So if you're coming in with different signs of expertise, we try to cater to that. Applications for the next cycle will open very soon, and here's information on the last year's version. We have an innovation grants program. Last year, we gave out $2 million in funding to innovative projects at the intersection of machine learning and climate. The focus is on pathway to impact rather than on research innovation. We're not looking for cutting edge machine learning here, though you're welcome to do that. But really, we want to fund projects that are bottlenecked in terms of actually having a meaningful impact. There should be a novel data set produced that catalyzes additional work. We think many projects will actually produce that. If you're interested in more details, look at last year's call here, and there's a new call which will open soon. We have webinars and happy hours every month for our webinars and every 2 weeks for our happy hours. More information on our website. And here's our newest initiative, looking for ML volunteers. Very excited to launch this. If you would like an ML expert to work on a small, like less than 20 hours project, we are going to try to help match you with volunteers from our community. You can fill out your project details here. And then finally, You can sign up for our newsletter, which gives information on a lot of these different initiatives and on the space overall, which has calls for submissions, funding, projects, readings, jobs, and other stuff. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Awesome. Carly's already given your newsletter a shout out as an awesome compilation of events, papers, jobs, and resources. So thumbs up from our community already. And do you want to jump in and ask your question?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, not you, Carly. Oh, I was going to Anne B. Sorry, Carly.
Sorry, didn't get that. Hi.
No, sorry.
Having
Sorry,
dinner at the same time. So no, all good. I was wondering how you get all this distributed. You're producing so much knowledge, and especially for policymakers, it's probably super relevant. So I'm wondering where your connection points there, and yeah, where's your area where you're distributing this, especially to policymakers.
A lot of different areas. So we wrote that report for the Global Partnership on AI, which is an OECD initiative that is quasi-governmental, and so it directly interfaces with policymakers. We also are asked to advise a number of policymakers. So, for example, I was just talking with actually the Chancellor of Germany about this. They're very interested in working on this area as a means of advancing climate action and also their AI ecosystem. And we've advised policymakers in like the EU Parliament, the US, various different branches of government, half a dozen different countries, governmental organizations. But mixture of policy briefs and direct interventions with policymakers.
Carly's asked something about WILDLABS doing a volunteer matchmaking sort of thing, and we found that's a really it's admirable you're trying that. It's a tricky thing to do. How can you tell us a little bit more about it? Have you seen it be successful?
This is a new project, so we can't say whether it's going to be successful or not, fingers crossed. We are looking for a fairly narrow scope here. Like we're specifically asking for people who need ML expertise for a short, well-defined project. If it's a long project, you shouldn't be bringing on a volunteer, you should be bringing on a paid staff member or a student. So this is specifically in the case that somebody is in an area that doesn't have, you don't know stuff about machine learning, but you want maybe you have some old code that somebody gave you and you'd like to update it for the newest version of PyTorch or TensorFlow or something like that. How do you do that? You'd like to re-implement something that's already coded up in your software stack. Maybe that's the kind of bite-sized task that would be really useful to have an experienced ML engineer do, which doesn't require really any kind of innovation. So that's the kind of task that we're looking for. And there are so many people who are eager to help, including many who are coming from well-paid jobs in software, right? So this is a particular niche where we see the volunteer aspect as being particularly meaningful, because there is that space of volunteers and there is that need for this kind of volunteership.
I think the narrow scope is the trick here. That also sounds gives me an opportunity to plug our AI for Conservation office hours is going to be back in the next month or two, which kind of slots in quite nicely or complements what you're doing with that volunteer thing. So maybe we should try and coordinate a little bit. But our AI for Conservation office hours matches.
That would be great.
Conservationists with AI challengers who could just really use like some time talking to a data scientist. We matchmake them. Dan's on the call. We matchmake them with Dan and his various network. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan. Good to see you.
It's various network of folks. So I wonder if there's some like little pieces of coordination we could do that could slot in. But let's pick that up later.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. What a delight to hear from your community, and I look forward to finding ways for ours to build some bridges. Now, before we hand over to Adrian, I'm going to hand to Ellie for our famous. Is it too much to call it that after one quiz? 2 quizzes.
We've done 2. I think we can start calling it famous. There are
Infinite.
plenty of like restaurants that say like we have world famous pie or whatever, and like no, they don't. It's all marketing. This is the world famous Wild Labs pop quiz. Here we go. Let me start sharing. I do want to share sound. Okay, the answers will briefly appear
Oh,
before
everyone, close your eyes.
Everyone, honor system, close your
Honor
eyes.
system, close your eyes. David. Okay, good. Keep them closed. At least slow.
Okay, everybody, open your eyes. We're good to go. Welcome to the Wild Labs Pop Quiz. All right. This week, we'll be learning a little bit about geography. Now, this quiz will be slightly different from in past weeks. There will be no multiple choice or anything like that. This is open-ended. I will be showing you a picture from our Tech for Wildlife photo feed, and you will be guessing where this photo is from, what country, what region of the world, what state. Drop your answers into the chat.
Am I quiz assistant?
Yes, Steph is our
quiz assistant.
lovely quiz assistant. If you have theories, you're also welcome to turn on your microphone and just shout out where you think it might be.
Okay.
I've tried to choose photos that have animals in them, so the animals might provide a clue, but other than that, you're on your own. The theories are up to you. So let's start out. This one's pretty easy. Where do we all think this is
Canada,
from?
Alaska.
It's Alaska.
Melanie.
This is, of course,
has gone very specifically. Katmai? Did I say it right?
That's right. These are the famous fat bears from Katmai National Park, and this was, of course, taken by the Bear ID project.
David's thrown in a bonus question saying, what are the names of those specific bears? Does anyone know?
I don't know. I've tried to ask the Bear ID team if they know each individual bear's names. I could send them that photo, and I bet they would probably know how it corresponds to the Fat Bear Challenge.
Right, we've got India, Bhutan, Nepal, again, Radia National Park.
Somebody got it. It's Nepal. Very, very quick. And this is from the Wild Track and Footprint Identification Technique folks working in Nepal. All right, people are doing pretty good so far. Where do we think this little guy's from?
No answers yet. Greek island. Oh, hey Ollie, I didn't see you here. Mediterranean, California, Antarctica? Who said Antarctica? David, okay. Europe, Finland, Turkey, San Diego, Spain.
Somebody got it. It is Turkey. I thought this one would be tricky because I did not realize seals lived in Turkey. So this one would have tricked me. Well done. There he is. All right. There's one person here who I think will definitely get this.
Brazil? Costa Rica, Mexico, Ecuador.
I would also love to hear some guesses about what little creatures people think these are. Does anyone recognize this little creature?
Robin's face is absolutely not. Madagascar, Ecuador.
Yeah, somebody
Australia?
got it. It's Madagascar. And I have never heard of these little guys. They look like fancy little squirrels to me. I figured Carly would maybe get it. Maybe Carly, our Madagascar expert, would be familiar with them. Carly, have you ever seen these little guys in the wild?
Yeah, I have. But that is a bad, I don't know, the lighting is really weird. The color messed me up. Like, because
are they basically just fancy little squirrels? Is that what we're looking at?
They're more like they're in the mongoose family.
Oh, okay. All right, this one might be easy for some people. If you're familiar with
California,
Anxiety
California,
Coast of
California,
Yeah, it's California.
Nevada,
So
California.
of course,
Condor.
my boys, the California Condors from the California Condor Recovery Program, my good friends. All right, where do we think this little fella and his mom is from?
Robin is naming it a sloth. Costa Rica, Peru, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Panama.
Nobody
No.
yet.
Nobody yet.
Nobody yet.
Oh, Brazil.
You guys are like on the right track, but no one has gotten it yet.
Ecuador, Colombia.
Yeah, it's Ecuador.
Carly
Yes.
took it out. Melanie took it out. Well done.
All right, this one might be pretty easy.
I mean, Galapagos.
Yes.
There's sprinting through the
Moving
chat.
right next door to the Galapagos Islands to see some of the famous Galapagos tortoises. All right.
What is this?
What about this little thing?
Ellie's backyard.
It's not my backyard.
New Zealand.
It's not my house either from when a mouse got in here. It's not that.
Australia. Namibia.
Somebody got it. It's Australia.
What is
And
it?
It's not a mouse. It's a little pygmy possum. It's so cute. Steph, you should know this. This is from your homeland. I put this in for you.
How was I supposed to know from like the little like blurry apple? No.
And finally, here's our last one. Where do we think this is?
South Africa, London, Botswana, Kenya.
Someone got it. It's the
Very good, Ollie.
I thought this one would be a really good trick. I can't believe someone got it. Yeah, that's the London Zoo, everybody. And thank you for playing our geography pop quiz game. You've all earned a certificate of achievement today in WILDLABS Variety Hour geography expertise. And with that, I'll hand it back over to our wonderful presenters.
Okay, well done. Thank you, Ellie. If anyone would like a formal certificate, please email Ellie after the show. She'll be happy to issue them. Right.
Oh, and if anyone would like to see the full Tech for Wildlife photo feed where all of those pictures were from, here it is in the chat. Check it out. It has all of the photos from our photo challenges throughout the year, as well as some other photos that people share to the Tech for Wildlife hashtag outside of the photo challenge. You can see a lot of great projects from all around the world.
Thanks, Ellie. All right, Adrian. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I was energized by that. That was a lot of fun. And you're definitely
Ellie,
ready for Twitch, sorry. It's quite, yeah.
Maybe by the end of your talk, you will convince us that NFTs are live and Twitch is our new home.
You can also issue those certificates as NFTs if you want. I can do that for you. But all right, I will share my screen.
And just for everyone, we will finish the recording on the hour. You can have 18 minutes. But if you haven't been to a WILDLABS call before, we do tend to hang out afterwards, and I suspect Adrian's talk's going to spark some fun conversations after the call. So do hang out if you have time. Okay, Adrian, take it away.
I should be only about 15 minutes anyway. So I've been asked to cover a fair amount of ground: blockchain, Web3, NFTs, conservation, about 15 minutes. So I might race through, but yes, I'm here afterwards for a discussion and very eager to talk about this always. First step, just this might be teaching you how to suck an egg, but blockchain, so we're all on the same page. I just want to raise not so much what blockchain is in the technology, but why. So blockchain technology makes possible to maintain an open spreadsheet of data and transactions i.e. a ledger, without third-party verification. That's the part that I would emphasize. That's the most important part about blockchain. It's quite easy to have a spreadsheet that's open. You can do that with Google Sheets. It's quite easy to have a third party maintaining that. What blockchain does is that it allows anybody who follows the right protocol to enter data into that ledger. So the real strength of this is Bob and Alice, when they transact online, they're never transacting directly. They're always transacting via an intermediary. It could be a bank, it could be notaries, government agencies, NGOs, companies. Blockchain simply replaces that with a protocol, much like an email protocol, allows you to communicate to anybody. So this creates the possibility of digital assets, of which we're going to be talking about a little bit later as NFTs. Web3 is often used kind of interchangeably with blockchain or in the same sentences, et cetera. It's not quite interchangeable. The way I would describe Web3 is by what it's not. It's not Web 1 or Web 2. So Web3 is essentially, we can imagine that there's a future iteration of the internet. The first iteration in the 90s was read-only, static text, sort of brick and mortar companies advertising their wares or disclosing information in just sort of a one direction. Web 2 is read-write. So it's creation of platforms for people to enter content, and so becoming content creators and allowing new business models like Airbnb, Uber, et cetera, et cetera. Web 3, we have to admit there will be a future version of Web 3. There's general consensus that it will be kind of more immersive, that it might be powered by stronger semantic web, for example, which means that computers will be able to analyze web pages much better. But very often Web3 is also conflated with ownership of data, ownership of digital assets across platform that's made possible via the blockchain. And so blockchain allows the certain version of Web3, let's say. And this gets people excited. Some of the future trends are that the world is heading towards a very digital future. So already the typical internet user spends 40% of their waking life online. We can bemoan that, but that's a trend which is only increasing. And people are talking about trillions of dollars in revenues for the metaverse. So it could be 1, it could be 5. I've even read 6 recently. People are kind of putting their finger in the wind. Essentially, it means that all sort of commercial transactions will be taking place in the metaverse. In that case, you can kind of interchange the word metaverse with Web3 in many ways, where the line is fine between the two. It's crypto specifically, so blockchain, the technology that may or may not make this Web3 or this future metaverse decentralized and with people owning their digital assets, et cetera. A few points that trends that I like to raise. The first is that it's significantly increasing, although it's still only 4% of the population that owns crypto assets. So in 2021, we had 3 times more owners than in 2020. So it's a massive explosion of use, but it's still only 4%. If this follows internet trends, we can expect over 1 billion users in just over 10 years. The other thing to raise is that it's a real global phenomenon. It's not just a Western European or Silicon Valley or even an Asian phenomenon. It's really throughout the world. And in fact, some of the countries with the most usage of crypto assets are countries where there are a lot of unbanked as well. So it's a very global, it's a global phenomenon. It's also a youth phenomenon. So 60% or nearly 60% of crypto owners are aged under 34. So it's really an emerging trend with this emerging generation. Again, this might be teaching you what you already know, but just so we have all the same knowledge, what is a non-fungible token? Well, what is a fungible thing? A fungible thing is like $1 is $1, whether it's Bob's or mine's or Alice, it's all the same. It doesn't matter. It's the same with Bitcoin and a whole bunch of these tokens that are cryptographic tokens like Ethereum, Cardano, all these are 1 for 1. But a house deed is not 1 for 1. That is not fungible. My house is not the same as my neighbor's house, even though it's very close. So the house deed is not the same, although it's an asset. And it goes also for like Pokemon cards or a whole bunch of things in real life. And in the digital space, for example, these are Reddit avatars, they're NFT, they are not like for like. So that is simply what an NFT is. It can be an avatar, it can be a collection card, it can be a deed, it can be a whole bunch of things. And the NFT market reached 40 billion in 2021. Now, this has led in our sector what we call FOMO, fear of missing out. So people paying probably exuberantly or irrational prices for some of these digital assets. So going for millions and millions from, you know, real considerate artwork to slightly less considerate pixel art. But the point is that I like to raise, and I really like to raise in the conservation community, is that what this reveals is that people are willing to pay for these digital assets. And in the conservation community, which I joined in 2009, been very often confronted with sort of economic studies evaluating ecosystem services or what the great whale might be worth economically. But the point is that nobody's actually putting up the money for that. So I find it very interesting that people are willing to pay for these assets. Since the height of the bubble, there's been quite a severe crash. So the market, you see some of these sensational headlines, which plunges 97%. This is absolutely true, and I witness it on a daily basis. But these are slightly sensational headlines, because 97 from the absolute top of the bubble doesn't actually tell you that there's a real upward trend regardless, that there's beginning to be mass adoption. There are collectibles like FIFA collectibles that are done online. There's big companies that are doing this, what they call phygital as well. So Nike's doing this with shoes, etc., that you can also wear in the metaverse. So there is nevertheless a trend which is still upward. In the conservation space, you may have seen some of these, but there are conservation NFTs that were part of this cycle. I have 4 here that I wanted to highlight because they kind of represent different categories, and they're all on different blockchains. The one on the left is by the Australia Zoo. This zoo is famous because it was Steve Irwin and his wife's zoo. It's now Robert Irwin is sort of the flag carrier. He has 3.5 million Instagram followers. They did a mint, I think it was in May, and it sold in 10 hours, and they made 100,000 Australian dollars. And they're now in the second mint, and they plan more mints. So this is, you know, real money. The second one that I like to highlight is almost the opposite, is done by a 14-year-old artist, a girl, a high school student. And she's raised over $1 million with these drawings and her artwork of beluga whales. She's donated over 240,000 to beluga whale conservation. So really from the ground up, no big NGO involved, no celebrity. This was made possible. Another example is sad rhinos, which I'll dig into in a second, because I know I've spoken with a lot of people in that project, so I have more information. But I wanted to highlight it because the projects to the left kind of make headlines, but sad rhinos actually is sort of more typical. It's a more sort of modest 7,500 euros. It also was didn't benefit because it was at the tail end of the bubble, but still, I want to say there's a lot of projects out there that actually don't work or raise less money and so on. So the average is probably closer to the sad rhinos than the Australia Zoo. Another example I wanted to raise is Nemus for a couple of reasons. One is because their target is quite significantly higher than a lot of other projects, 4 to 5 million. But also because it's an outfit that actually owns land in the Amazon forest. It's a Brazilian company that owns the land. So by buying the NFT, you're not directly owning the land, but you are filling in the coffers of the company that it does own the land. So NFTs can do that as well. The typical kind of format for these NFTs, this varies from project to project, but generally these are kind of relatively similar. You do have to pay the sort of the marketing, all the maintenance, the creation, the artwork, etc. There's developers that need to be paid, and then you're ended up with something like 30% to the selected charity. My personal sense is that is still too low, and they need to be higher. But eventually, maybe if there's a marketplace, that percentage can vary, and people can make up their own minds. But what's important to note as well is that these costs can diminish over time. And also there are royalties in the secondary market. So when you're buying it firsthand, that's the breakdown. But when they're traded afterwards, then the charity can get a percentage. And imagine that percentage is 5% forever, every time they're traded. That creates a revenue which is longer term, more predictable, and quite interesting.
Can I jump
Please?
in? That added up to 110%?
Oh gosh.
So maybe 55%?
It's 55. It's 55 to the team, because I'm sure
yeah.
of the 30 and the 15. Thank you for that. I'll change it for the next slides. Yeah, I know it's 30 and I know it's 15, so it must be 55.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Carry on.
We're talking about the future NFTs as well. And so what's interesting to raise now in the current cycle is that this is still done in Web 2, basically. So the money is raised, and then it is wired by the project to the charities. And this is, I think, still a little bit of a failing, but I expect and predict that in the future, these will be embedded in code in the contract so that people can see. The issue here is that the charities must have crypto wallets for that to happen, or escrow accounts of sorts. But this also is time consuming and obviously has costs when you've got people sort of making transfers every week and checking the sums, et cetera. So there's a fair amount of criticism of NFTs. We can talk about that. But if you look at it from the other way around, it's very stale out there in terms of how NGOs raise their money. A lot of them raise money via so-called adoption schemes or symbolic adoption schemes, and they resemble each other to an alarming degree. Another thing that's alarming is that NGOs derive almost 50% of their budget from individual giving. So, and this is their mechanism. And the feedback loop is often a magazine or a postcard, often a postcard with a request for further funding. And so there's really a disparity between what's being done and what is made possible, notably by NFTs, but at least digitally. So I would argue that at the very least, NFTs are a logical evolution. If you look at the plush toys that are for sale for $60, low quality, completely generic about a species, when you get into the digital space, you can create species, you can create animals that are personalized. They can reflect real animals. They can have individual quirks or stories. They have individual traits. And so it allows a lot more granularity. And I find this quite interesting in terms of feedback loop with the donor base. And the future of NFTs, I'd raise maybe two general topics. The one is what is possible kind of with the NFTs that I've shown to date. So you can have completely immersive gamified environments that are really appealing with a lot of stories. That's an animals project on the top left. You can imagine all that's possible with augmented reality and social networks, taking a picture with a leopard on your shoulder or playing around with your rhino. You can also imagine adoption schemes that represent real land and real animals, and imagine push notifications. So you work in a national park and you can immediately communicate with all the people who are symbolically adopting the animals in your land. You can push information out and hopefully get much greater engagement and investment. I use the word investment because it's not just financial, but obviously there is an element of financial investment as well. There's also future utility, which is quite interesting. The NFTs tend to not be very useful to date in this cycle. There's been some attempts, and there are some that have tried. But I think this is the next frontier. So there's a lot of talk of tokenizing carbon offsets. So you can imagine with biodiversity offsets, which is a much more non-fungible notion than carbon. Land can be represented as non-fungible tokens in blockchain, and there are already existing examples. Now, it's a little bit provocative. I usually shy away from any project that owns land directly, but this Moss Amazon project, actually, that is exactly what they're doing. They really want the NFT holder to actually own the land. So it's very tricky. It opens up a whole bunch of moral issues, legal, regulatory issues as well. But this is definitely possible. And I actually ran a poll recently on LinkedIn thinking that the answer would be an unequivocal, this should never be done. And actually a very large majority said that this can be done well if done well. So these are things that are possible. And again, you've got things like camera traps. And I see all this data that was given earlier in the earlier presentations, the bird migration, et cetera. These are data that you can provide directly to the NFT owners as information and sort of reward for their participation. The other thing I want to end with is that NFTs are not to be thought only as a fundraising tool. For example, Sad Rhino 7,500, that's not going to change your game fundamentally. But NFTs also have their own communities, a fundamentally different way of communicating. This is Discord. It's very popular with NFTs. And it's just fundamentally a different way of engaging community. And the community, if you're looking at reaching out to the younger generation, then it's really important to have your finger on the pulse. And Discord is such a thing. And yes, Twitch is also another. They have a charity button directly. There's a lot of contests. There was one recently that raised 11 million in one. So there's a sort of there's a culture of charity giving in Twitch. And quite frankly, for everything that I've seen from the Variety Hour, I think you would definitely make a really interesting channel on Twitch. That's it. Thank you very much for having
I think you ticked all the boxes and then snuck in a Twitch recommendation. Okay, there's been a lot of conversation, debate happening in the chat already. Probably, so thank you for that. Why don't we? I'm going to keep the if anyone needs to pop off, totally fine. I'm going to keep the recording on so we can have a bit of conversation recorded because there are a lot of people. I think we've had some trouble with Eventbrite and Zoom today. So I'm going to record it. If you guys need to go, that's totally fine, but we're going to keep the recording open. Who do I throw to first? David Rolnick, not the other David. I'm going to throw to you first.
Okay.
You've got questions.
Man, such responsibility. There's so much debate going on in the chat here. So the main question that I had here is really the proposition that you were spending most of the time talking about, that because people are willing to pay for these things, people should be making more of them, when arguably people are paying for them not because they're delivering value in most cases, but because they are expected to go up in value. There's only so much that such things are will actually go up in value. Of course, it doesn't take very much money to produce one of these things. So it's not a super huge investment, but there is an investment of like labor and knowledge if an organization comes up with an NFT, and when the market either crashes or just stabilizes, why will people want these things? What is the actual value provided versus like a physical tote bag or a collectible koala, which you can at least stick in your living room and was much more biologically plausible than the digital version, which you shared.
So, so it's linked. So first of all, there is speculation, and I don't think that. I think that there's a very large market for people who want to buy them for their own right, not expecting it to go up in price. If you're aiming for that audience who are speculating going up in price, then this is not what I'm talking about. This is not the game. Is there a market for people who want to buy digital goods to showcase their digital identity? I think there's a very, very large market for that, and the market is going to increase significantly. So you can talk about wares, you can talk about clothing in the fashion industry, you can talk about having kind of animals in your games or follow in your virtual worlds where people are spending a lot of time. So you can have that koala, for example, be your friend in that world. You can also talk about badges. You can even sort of bleed into loyalty programs, but you can imagine badges. I mean, Reddit's full of these badges. You can buy these things. I think that as people spend more and more time online, there is a demand to showcase your digital identity, who you are, what you stand for, etc. And so there is a market for people who want these things to be a part of their profile, to be a part of their identity, and who don't necessarily expect that they will go up significantly in price.
Why do you need NFTs for that? Why can't you just have a certificate that is, I contributed X amount to this conservation organization, and then I will stop and I'll buy something.
Well, where do you put that certificate?
Well, the point of NFTs is that it's decentralized. You can have it decentralized if it's from a particular organization. If it's just, send a query to the Sierra Club and just see if they actually have this person in their database. Might as well just have the database.
No, but it's cross-platform. So if you want to use that in Minecraft or Roblox or whatever virtual worlds are coming up, then you can transfer that, and that requires blockchain. You can't otherwise if you're relying on the third party. So if right now Roblox has turned that down, so whatever you earn in Roblox, you cannot use in other platforms. That's what we're trying to avoid.
Sure, but then a third party could come up with something that is to anybody who doesn't know the space the same, and the only way to verify is to actually go to the source, right? Like if something becomes sufficiently much in demand, then you're going to have a whole bunch of copycats, and they will not be digitally the same, but they will be to anybody who doesn't know the space the same. The only way to actually verify it is to go to the organization.
It's not really hard to verify. So if Opagetta has a crypto wallet and issues NFTs, it's on their database. You can easily check, and that's how people navigate this space all the time. So you got to verify that this NFT that you bought really was made by Beeple and minted by Beeple and not minted by Adrian Dellecker online. And that's very easy to verify. So you can find out that way. In fact, today there was a news, I don't know if I saw it on Twitter today, but like now if you Google an address, you just Google the Ether address or the Bitcoin address, you have the list of all the assets. So that's something that didn't exist yesterday and does exist now on Google. So just Googling so if you want to Google Opejeta's wallet, I'm using it because that was the Sad Rhino example, then you get a list of all the assets. There you go.
Apologies, it was a facilitation fact. David, I'm going to throw you in a sec, but I'm going to give it to Stu first. Stu, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, hi, Adrian. Sorry, this question is really, probably you might have just answered it, but I'm not really aware if you did. But this whole thing about third-party verification and when it's required and by how, because yeah, if you're producing something, an NFT is produced and then it's being linked up to another, to either something else, blockchain, if it's to Minecraft or to Roblox, wherever, who's going to be verifying that? And does that go against what you introduced the presentation with about the fact you don't need any third-party verification?
Yeah, so the idea is that there is an underlying basis, which is blockchain based on the internet, that everybody kind of respects and understands that the ledger is immutable. And so everybody, and if you're an existing outfit like Minecraft or Google, you integrate that, you query the data in order to populate your own data, your own virtual world or whatever you're selling, or any future actor coming on. So yeah, that is the third party, but the idea, the power behind the lack of the need for a third party is you are owning that data. Facebook Meta, if they have a world that accepts Ethereum based NFTs, then you own that forever. If Meta were to go bankrupt or go pure evil and steal your stuff, they cannot do that with blockchain. And if you get fed up with Meta, so you have all these ecosystems, like for example, Apple, I don't know if this is the best example, but like you get sucked in these ecosystems because all of that stuff actually is on an operating system, which feeds on itself. And so it's really hard to leave the Apple ecosystem if you've accumulated all of that stuff. And it's really hard to leave sort of, the Roblox ecosystem if you've accumulated all this stuff on there. But with blockchain is that you own that stuff. So if suddenly there's a better offering somewhere else, then you just migrate it and use it in that other platform. All it has to do is agree to the protocol of Ethereum or whatever blockchain. You're on mute, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Man, sorry, I'm failing at facilitation. David Savage, do you want to jump in? You've got quite a few questions.
Sure.
Go for it.
I have a bunch of questions. Some of them were just kind of things to toss out, but the thing I want to ask Adrian specifically is, I'm wondering kind of where you see the future of using blockchain and NFTs for conservation, because you kind of laid out two different use cases, one of which is basically the digital equivalent of a tote bag that says Audubon Society, and the other of which is you have these like decentralized blockchain land trusts, I guess would be the kind of analog I would use. And I'm wondering what you think in kind of the next few years. Do you think that the space will kind of err really heavily towards one or the other, or kind of where do you see growth or decline happening?
I mean, utility is complicated. So, for example, an NFT cannot in itself change, and that's part of the problem of embedding utility. What you can do is by being the owner of an NFT, that gives you certain, for example, rights to data, to access, etc. So, so there is, just to say, I think the biggest potential long term is utility, but it's the sort of the hardest. So it's really still very experimental. There are what I talked about, owning land. There's the credits that can be linked to remote sensing, for example, or other. You can imagine going beyond NFTs, also in token. You can imagine also incentivizing data collection and creating communities that share this economy. I think that if there's a new cycle soon, then you'll see more of these NFT type things that I've raised the 4 examples, so for fundraising. And hopefully there'll be a lot of lessons learned from last time, and that they'll be much more interesting with a lot of feedback loops. And the big difference is whether or not charities will have crypto wallets. There's still there is a resistance to adopting crypto wallets, which means that things are not done on chain, which is, yeah, it makes that whole sort of nice proposition of having an NFT going to charity a little bit less interesting, you know, because you're still going back to the old system.
Why is there resistance from the charities about having crypto wallets?
A lot of it is legal and taxes. They're not sure how they will be taxed, and they're afraid of that. Some of it is, some of it in the past has been about energy consumption. Ethereum being the most popular blockchain was proof of work, and proof of work is extremely intensive in terms of energy usage, and the carbon footprint is quite significant. I mean, the debate, I think, was slightly more nuanced because it's a flexible energy that moves around and can also incentivize renewable energy use. It's been shown, but nevertheless, Ethereum has moved to a proof, or consensus, which is called proof of stake, which consumes absolutely negligible amounts of energy, as much as Twitter or whatever. So I think that resistance was strong. There were a lot of sort of boards that did not want to open wallets for that reason, and that's gone now, which is good. There were other chains that use proof of stake, but they're less popular. The taxation and legal implications were, I would say, the biggest hurdle. But there are real examples of people who didn't even want to touch NFTs with the 16-foot pole, and who then said, yes, we want to do it. And then once they've done it, they said, now we're ready, we want to do it again. And they had the internal kind of protocols. The hard part was kind of getting the communication ready, getting, you know, the whole mechanism ready. And once you've got the machinery, you're like, okay, well, next one, I'm ready for the next one, you know. I suspect it's only a matter of time before charities open crypto wallets. I mean, it's not massively complicated. It depends on the jurisdiction quite a bit.
If I can just follow up on the crypto wallet question real quick. How are they handling price volatility from crypto, right? You know, you got to decide when to cash out to pay your workers in whatever currency.
So in the crypto world, there's a very famous, I mean, in the investment world too, but there's a very famous DCA, dollar cost averaging. And I think that's the only real solution, is you just have to agree to a schedule of payment, which is like, you know, it could be weekly, it could be monthly, and then you just close your eyes, and the price might go up and might go down, but you convert it into either on-chain stable currencies like USD, coin or Tether or whatever, or you literally cash out in your bank account. But if you do it on a say weekly basis automatically, then you know, it's not a big deal, because if the price goes down significantly, you can increase the price of future NFTs.
Okay, I'm going to wrap this conversation up and like stop the recording, but I think my final question to you, Adrian, is we get approached by like crypto, blockchain, NFT people all the time, and a lot of it, to me, this is the first time we've even had an event that has touched on blockchain or crypto, just because we have steered so far away from it, not wanting to waste people's time, because to me it just, there are so many more urgent things for conservationists to be spending time on, and the use cases haven't been proved yet. Like, we're a risk averse sector that I think it's just not been ready for us to delve in, and you and others are kind of sitting on the cutting edge of it and testing it out for the rest of us. I guess, at what point do you think people should be like, this should be actually looked at seriously by conservationists, and what we should be spending time on and building into our programming and paying attention to, and taking the risk of diving into it?
No, I mean, I understand it. Obviously, I get that a lot as well. I think it's about future-proofing the industry. I think it's about being ready. I think there's a lot of for-profit companies that are looking, they're investing. I can't tell you a percentage, you know, the varying degrees of risk or appetite or money, of course. But I think just ignoring it and either wishing it would go away or just leaving it, kicking the can down the road, is a mistake. I mean, I'm probably biased, as you suspect, but I think it is important to try and see that this is a significant trend. Some uses of blockchain are definitely not going away. I mean, obviously I could be wrong, and you can, remind me in 5 years if I'm really wrong, but Bitcoin is not going away. I very, very much doubt that Ethereum is going away. If it is going away, it'll be because somebody's doing it better, but there'll be another sort of virtual computer running on blockchain. So I think being ready for that is important. You mentioned it's a risk averse industry. That's true, but I think that's a bit of a shame. I mean, it's also an industry that's always struggling for money, and this is me being very idealistic. I am an idealist. I am convinced that conservation organizations are sitting on an asset that people want. So it's moving from a mentality of asking for charity from donors to one which is actually selling a service, a conservation service. And I think if the experience is much better, then people are going to be willing to pay for that conservation service. What's needed is that there's greater transparency. Right now, if you give $5 to X big NGO, there's a lack of trust in how that money is being spent. There's a lack of control. There's a lack of engagement. It's a technology, right? It can do really terrible things. It can encourage speculation, do stupid things, but it also can allow a lot more things to happen for conservation. And I'm just, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but what does, say if I give $5, how does that give more trust? Like it's going to go to overhead or whatever. What access does that give?
So, well, it depends. It depends on who's doing it. My idea, my sort of vision, and might be delusional, but is that there can be kind of a marketplace in a way for the conservation services. So, parks that are sitting on really cool assets and stories that are good at communicating this, that are good at feeding this back directly and possibly in the form of NFTs, are at a competitive advantage. And so, if you're sitting on real assets, rather than just asking for donations, then you can be kind of, selling stories, etc. And that's exactly what happened in the case of Audubon. The presentation, it's data, and it's also, and I clicked on all these things, and I'll look at them eagerly afterwards. There's also the stories. So how do you kind of feed those stories directly into the people who are paying for this, and actually also incentivizing? So if you've adopted X animal and that animal is facing a difficulty in that environment, then the thing I adopted is struggling. It needs help. It needs either further funding, or it needs something which might be considered an overhead in a sort of stale annual report. But actually, you need a car, you need a fence being repaired, or you need a salary. Those things can be sold, I think, with the story.
Okay, interesting. A lot to think about. I'm just going to wrap there. So just for the recording purposes, thank you so much, Adrian, and for our other speakers who joined us today. We'll see everyone again in 1 month for our next event. But if you do want to hang out, we'll have a bit more of a casual chat about NFTs and what we talked about today. Otherwise, thanks everyone, and we'll see you again next time.